let's talk about what happens when a powerful institution gets backed into a corner. We're going to dive into a moment where, under incredible pressure, it didn't just bend, it snapped. And what was revealed wasn't just a mistake, it was a raw, public display of fear and control playing out at the highest level.
You see, what we witnessed wasn't some boring procedural delay or a legal mix-up. No, our source argues this was a raw, unfiltered declaration of power, panicking in real time. This quote right here, it perfectly captures the psychological shift we're about to unpack.
So we're going to break down how a single court filing, one from Donald Trump's Department of Justice about the Epstein files, went from being a legal argument to what our source is calling a psychological confession, a confession of deep institutional fear.
Okay, to really get a handle on this declaration of immunity, we first have to ask, what was the trigger? What happened that pushed this massive institution to make such a wild, radical move?
Well, it all kicked off when Congress passed the Epstein Transparency Act. The whole point of the law was to shine a light into one of the system's absolute darkest corners. And everyone just kind of assumed that, well, even Donald Trump's Department of Justice had to follow the law. That assumption, it was about to get completely blown apart. So instead of making excuses or, asking for more time, Donald Trump's Department of Justice made this absolutely jaw-dropping claim that no court, not a single one, had the right to enforce this law against them. Think about that. Their position was, essentially, you can't touch us. Not now, not ever. This wasn't a legal argument anymore. It was a straight-up declaration of total immunity.
To really grasp the strategy here, or lack thereof, our source says we need to look past the legal jargon and into the psychology of power itself. So we're going to use the framework from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power, which basically treats power as this ruthless game of strategy. And from that perspective, the DOJ's move wasn't just bold, it was a complete disaster.
Yeah, this one single action violates several of the most basic principles of keeping power. This wasn't some kind of sophisticated 4D chess move. It was a reckless gamble that pretty much broke all the rules of the game.
And right here, you can just see the stress fractures. For months, Donald Trump's Department of Justice had been saying that judges and court rules were the reason for all the delays with the Epstein files. But now they're arguing judges have no authority whatsoever. A contradiction that blatant isn't a strategy. It's a giant flashing sign that says desperation.
From a power dynamics viewpoint, this move just shattered multiple rules. They violated never outshine the master by trying to steamroll the federal judge. They built a fortress, cutting themselves off from any kind of oversight. And they totally failed to conceal your intentions, making it obvious their real goal was just to obstruct.
Now, here's a subtle detail, but it is incredibly telling. The court filing was missing the signatures of the career prosecutors, the people who form the actual backbone of the DOJ. Only the top political leadership signed it. That's a quiet but absolutely screaming signal of a revolt inside the building. It suggests the pros, the people who do the work, wanted no part of this.
So yeah, this wasn't some calculated risk. The way our source frames it, this was a panicked, knee-jerk reaction from an institution that suddenly felt completely cornered and exposed.
So what exactly triggered the panic? A really rare moment of bipartisanship. A progressive Democrat, Ro Khanna, and a libertarian Republican, Thomas Massie, filed a joint brief together. They basically argued the DOJ couldn't be trusted to police itself on this. That unexpected, unified pressure from both sides of the aisle, it forced the DOJ's hand, and what it revealed was a purely authoritarian instinct.
By picking the most extreme option they had, declaring total immunity, Donald Trump's Department of Justice didn't project strength. It projected absolute fear. A fear of being watched, a fear of being held accountable, and maybe a fear of what's actually in those Epstein files.
And this all leads us to a really chilling, fundamental question, doesn't it? If the very institution in charge of enforcing the law believes no one can enforce the law against it, then why should any of us believe a single thing it says? What happens to accountability when it's suddenly declared optional?
This move has what is maybe the most damaging consequence of all. It completely shatters the public's belief in the system itself.
Look, power works because people believe it's legitimate, that it's constrained by rules. That's what gives it authority. But the second it declares it answers to no one, like Donald Trump's Department of Justice did here, that belief just evaporates. Authority vanishes, and all that's left behind is just raw domination.
According to our source, the damage from something like this is pretty much irreversible. Once that illusion of accountability is gone, every future delay, every redacted document, every official statement, it's no longer seen as just procedure. It's immediately interpreted as guilt. The trust is just gone.
So, in the end, this is about way more than just the Epstein files. It's about the incredibly dangerous precedent this sets for how power is allowed to operate. The sheer desperation of this move forces you to do some disturbing math. What could possibly be in those Epstein files that would make the cost of telling the truth higher than the cost of, basically, public, institutional self-destruction? As it says here, power doesn't take a gamble this massive for no reason.
And that leaves us with the most important takeaway of all. The real, long-term danger isn't anyone's secret or any hidden name. It's the lesson this teaches, that the law is optional for the powerful. And that's a lesson that, once it's learned, eats away at the very foundation of the system. And once that foundation cracks, you have to ask what comes next.